why I chose Gigs & Co for my self-employed brokerage. Today I'm joined by Ollie Henson, who is a self-employed estate agent running his own agency in Huntingdon under the Gigs & Co brand. Why did you choose Gigs & Co? Talk to me.
Chris, I worked for or with Matt for 10 years and I'd run Gigs & Co in St Neots, and I'd never really treated it that it wasn't my business. I was an employed estate agent, so I suppose seller, valuer, office manager, and in the latter part of the career a director. But I'd never really treated it as anything other than my own. And when I left corporate estate agency, I kind of knew Matt. And people watching this today might be familiar with Matt through his own social media presence. But one of the things we had the same ideology, I suppose. We had the same beliefs, and I think I'm sitting around here surrounded by sort of Star Wars memorabilia, and I suppose it's that there's always two. There's the master and the apprentice, and I think that's certainly in the early part of my career exactly as it felt. As I've progressed through, why not a different self-employed model? I think.
Well, before you tell me about Gigs & Co, and again, I must stress, ladies and gentlemen, Ollie or Gigs & Co have not paid anything for this. It's just that we're talking about lots of topics today, and this I thought was an interesting one. Is what went off in your head or in your heart about wanting to be your own boss?
I think it's probably a midlife crisis, Chris, as much as anything. I was approaching 40. I'd been an agent for 23, 24 years by that point. I think I realised that I've probably been in the industry longer than I might be in the industry moving forward. One of the great things about working when I worked with Matt at Gigs & Co is we'd have lots of people come to train with us. So lots of people that would come along for the day, and I would take lots of business owners out on appointments. So they'd sort of shadow me around for the day, and I got to start speaking to them. And, there's that kind of realization where they were these, I'm looking at these guys thinking, you're super successful. You've got 3 offices, 4 offices, 10 offices in some cases. And yet you're looking for me for help or guidance or a different perspective on how to do things. And I think the realization is the only thing that was kind of really stopping me or holding me back was doing it. It was having that bit of sort of self-belief. Mindset, I suppose, as much as anything, thinking you can do it.
Weren't you worried that you'd fail?
Yeah, massively. I think that's probably what held me back or stopped me from doing it before. I've always, I think, and most people are programmed this way, everyone strives to achieve. And if you can be a bit of an overthinker, sometimes you think, oh God, what happens if it doesn't go right? Particularly when you've got a mortgage and you've got 3 kids at home and a wife that depend on an income. It's something we had to sit down and go, look, is this something we're going to do? But I got great support. The conversation with Matt, and to a certain extent, he actively encouraged it, and that's a difficult conversation to have with your boss. Actually, I think I might want to go off and do something.
So did you say I want to be? I'm thinking of setting up my own agency.
I think we sat down and talked, and one of the great things that I've found in the relationship that I've been able to have with Matt is we're constantly talking about what can we do next, how does it evolve, what pushing me out of my comfort zone, I think, to a certain extent, which
is unheard of with a lot of bosses.
Yeah,
I mean Matt is good, isn't he?
We can't talk too much about Matt being good. He'll get a big head, but no, he is great. He's I think a lot of that, it's easy to keep doing the same thing, and I wasn't unhappy. I earned a good salary. I had a job that I'd done for multiple years and felt really comfortable, but there was something, Chris, that I probably wasn't quite fulfilled, and it's that nervous energy, I suppose, you take when you go and start something different.
Okay, what would your advice be to anyone who loves their firm but has probably got that little itch? Or how would you approach your boss if they haven't got someone who's as open-minded as Matt?
I think you're right. You have to have that relationship, and I think sitting down and not presenting it as a sales pitch, but how could it be a win-win for both parties?
If I went self-employed in your model, I mean, you went and opened up another branch, but you could have done it in potentially.
Yeah, could have done it in St Neots, but as I said, I'd never treated Gigs and Co like it wasn't mine, and I buy into the concept of what we do and how we do it, and the way in terms of that we market the property. So there was never any disconnect with that. I think it was the case of, I think it's trusting yourself. I remember listening to a video you did a few years back, Chris, and you were talking about listers, and listers just want to be loved, and they just sit there and the bits coming in, and it niggled me at the time, because and probably because it's holding a mirror up and asking yourself some difficult questions. So I think there's a constant want to try and prove. For me, I suppose it wasn't a completely cold start, because there was already a brand, there was already a model in place, but it was in an area that we didn't really cover, and I'd spent 10, 12 years building up this business alongside Matt, loads of relationships, and moving to an area where effectively starting from scratch again. So there's that right, wanting to prove it. Matt is constantly about self-development. If anyone that knows him, that's something that he's actively, encouraging anybody to do. And we found a way to make it work, which he hadn't done it quite that way with anybody else previously.
So there's probably a message out to bosses out there that if you've got a red hot valuer who could bugger off to say EXP or somewhere else, you might want to offer that.
Why wouldn't you? If you, I think as you build a team of people, you want to keep hold of good people, and with what else that they can bring. And as I said, I'd been I wasn't there from day one at Gigs and Co, but I think I was about 8 months, 9 months into it, and the group had grown from there being sort of 3 or 4 of us to being nigh on 40 of us. So a lot of those people I'd sort of come in, had a part in helping train them up, or sort of sending them off into different areas. So again, it wasn't something that I woke up one morning and went, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I just needed something else. And then it was a case of sitting down with Matt and going, right, how could that look? How could it work? How could it benefit the group and continue the growth of the group in general?
So without me asking, you've kind of told me why you chose Gigs and Co.
Yeah.
Because of Matt. What I believe, when people ask me who's the best self-employed model, I say 80% of the decision needs to be on the one-to-one relationship that you have with the brokerage and the person in the brokerage. Completely.
I mean, I know some great self-employed agents that work for other, self-employed brokerages. I always worry about what support that's there. Who's holding you accountable? Who's that person? And that's the great relationship that I've got with Matt is, ultimately it's, you get off and you do it, and you do it the way that works for you. And we've worked so long together that, there's a certain style and a way that we do it within the Gigs group. But it's that accountability, it's that person that sets you back on track when you're...
And I think there's a lot of models out there that say, right, we'll give you cheap Rightmove, cheap Zoopla, we'll give you a CRM, we'll take 20-30% of your fee, off you go, son. Yeah. Off you go, love.
Yeah.
And I think that's the crux of it is that it's that relationship that you have. And there's plenty of people, there's certain models out there that quite obviously you get paid to bring people into the self-employed model, which I do not have an issue with. However, what I do have an issue is if you're going to take some of that money, which again you've never had, because that's the way that you're not taking money from food from their mouths. But what are you doing in return for that?
I think for me it's that there will be some successes, because let's face it, there are some brilliant agents out there that don't have a spare 50 or 100 grand in their back pocket to go and set up on their own. So I think it's definitely a good model. It'd be interesting to see about the people that are brought in and it doesn't necessarily work, that are they're brought in.
Which is quite a lot.
I imagine it would be. I haven't seen the stats.
anecdotal evidence suggests it's about 1 in 3.
Yeah, and that's, it's still fairly in its infancy. You know, what's the data behind the amount of businesses that make it out their first 5 years? So, you know, let's fast forward 3 years from today and see how many of those are in place. So, you know, you talk of that fear of failure. It's never going into anything with the mindset of failing, far from it. But it's also knowing your strengths, knowing what parts of the industry and the business that I'm good at, but also then having the support network behind you of
And
the
that's
people
what
that
Matt gives you.
are completely, and across the group, not just Matt. You know, I've got it with a fellow business partner in Damien. You know, for people that go off there, and I've been an agent, as I say, all my working life. I've done nothing else. I'm institutionalized from that point, and I love it, Chris. I absolutely love it. I love the people. I love the dealing with it. I love the day-to-day intricacies. But I think, again, going off just completely on your own, I can imagine it'd be bloody lonely. You know, and I you know, in the last 18 months of being self-employed, there have been some absolute phenomenal highs, but God, there've been some lows as well. You ride that emotional roller coaster when, you know, you think everything's coming together, and, you know, you're days away from an exchange, and
the sale falls through, but that might have cost you, say, 100 quid, and now it's going to cost you 3-4 grand. That's what's paying your mortgage that month.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, are the lights staying on or not? You know, what we're doing. So it's being on that, and it's a sobering feeling, I can assure you. As you say, you get to that particular point, and it's a very much right. Okay, here we're going to do it. Motivating, you know, you put the effort in and you put the work in, but the support network, and I think that thought is, you know, on the good days you're probably not as good as you think you are, and on the bad days you're not as bad as you think you are either. It's having that person that can sometimes, you know, step away and be on it. You know, as I said, I'm lucky. I have that relationship where I think between me and Matt, we can be pretty honest with each other. You know, I don't have to say certain things just to get there. And equally, he's said some things that you go, oh, that hurts. But
yeah, Matt is very good. And I think, if you don't mind me saying, Alan Damien's good, but Matt, it really is cream of the crop.
yeah, they're different. They're different agents, and they've got different traits, you know, in terms of what things are good at. But from that point, and an encouragement, absolutely.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.